My brothers and sisters, sometimes in life, we think we have it all, yet deep down, we feel empty. She had friends, she had plans, she had dreams, but her heart was restless. She smiled for the world, but inside she was broken. She lost herself, until she turned back to the one who never leaves. The moment she found Allah, her tears turned into peace, her confusion into clarity, and her weakness into strength. Because when you find Allah, you find yourself. The hidden emptiness behind worldly success is something that many people experience but few are willing to admit. On the outside, life may look perfect, a good job, wealth, recognition, friends, and even luxuries that others can only dream of. Yet, deep inside, there is a silent void that none of these things can fill. This emptiness creeps into the heart quietly. A person may laugh in public, post the happiest of pictures on social media, and appear as though everything is in order, but when they are alone, the silence becomes deafening, and the soul begins to whisper that something is missing. It is at this moment that many realize success as defined by the world is not success at all. It can be a trap, a glittering illusion that convinces people they are fulfilled when in reality their hearts are starving. The problem lies in how human beings often define achievement. Society tells us that success is wealth, popularity, and material gain, but the heart knows better. The heart was never created to be satisfied with money, fame, or possessions. It was created to find peace in remembrance of Allah. When someone chases the world relentlessly, they end up tired, restless, and disappointed, because nothing in this world was designed to give eternal satisfaction. Think of the many people who outwardly seem to have it all yet still feel empty. Celebrities, entrepreneurs, and even ordinary individuals often fall into depression despite achieving milestones that others envy. This is because worldly success cannot give the soul what it needs most, closeness to its creator. She experienced this in her own life. She had goals and ambitions, and she worked hard to achieve them. She gained recognition, she had people who admired her, and she thought that these things would make her feel alive and complete. But with every achievement came a deeper emptiness. Each milestone gave her a brief rush of excitement, but the feeling never lasted. She would return home at night, exhausted, staring at the ceiling, asking herself why she still felt so incomplete. It was as if she was chasing shadows that disappeared the moment she thought she had caught them. That emptiness grew heavier, and no matter how much she distracted herself with entertainment, friends, or worldly pursuits, it never went away. This is the reality of the hidden emptiness behind worldly success. It is like drinking salty water when you are thirsty. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. No amount of wealth can buy inner peace, no number of followers can heal a broken heart, and no worldly recognition can replace the serenity that comes from bowing your head to Allah. The human soul was designed with a need for the divine, and until that need is fulfilled, nothing else will ever be enough. This hidden emptiness is the gentle reminder from Allah that we are meant for more than this world, that our hearts will always remain unsettled until they find Him. Chasing happiness in the wrong places is one of the greatest struggles of the human heart. From a young age, we are conditioned to believe that if we acquire certain things, if we achieve certain milestones, if we surround ourselves with certain people, then we will finally be happy. Advertisements tell us that happiness is in a product. Society tells us that happiness is in status, and people around us often make us believe that relationships, wealth, or recognition are the keys to fulfillment. So she followed that path, like so many others do, hoping that at the end of it she would find peace. She thought if she could surround herself with people who loved her, if she could buy the things she dreamed of, if she could achieve the goals she had in mind, then the emptiness inside would finally disappear. Yet every time she thought she found happiness, it slipped through her fingers, leaving her even more restless than before. She began by chasing happiness in friendships and relationships. She believed that if she had people who valued her, people who gave her attention, people who filled her time with laughter and affection, then her heart would be at ease. For a while, it seemed to work. The company of others distracted her from the silence within. But when the gatherings ended and she was left alone, the emptiness returned. She realized that people's attention is temporary, and even the most loving friends cannot carry the weight of her soul's longing. No matter how much they tried to support her, they could never provide the inner stillness her heart was craving. Then she thought perhaps material success was the answer. She worked hard to earn money, to buy beautiful clothes, to decorate her home, to experience the luxuries she once dreamed about. Every purchase brought excitement, every possession gave her a temporary thrill, but soon the joy would fade. The brand new item would lose its shine, and she would find herself looking for the next thing to buy, hoping it would give her lasting contentment. The cycle never ended, because material things were never meant to fill a spiritual void. They can bring comfort, but they cannot bring true happiness. She also chased happiness in achievements and recognition. She set goals, worked tirelessly, and celebrated when she reached them. People praised her, congratulated her, and admired her, yet deep down she still felt incomplete. Success felt sweet, but only for a moment, and once the applause faded, so did the sense of fulfillment. She kept setting new goals, believing the next accomplishment would finally give her peace. But the emptiness was always there waiting for her at the end of every celebration. There were moments when she tried to fill the void with entertainment, distractions, and indulgences. She would drown herself in music, social media, movies, and endless scrolling, just to escape the feeling of loneliness inside. For a short time, she could forget the ache of her heart, but the moment the noise stopped, the silence of emptiness returned stronger than before. Distractions only numbed the pain, they never healed it. The more she tried to run away from herself, the more exhausted she became. What she did not realize at first was that her heart was sending her a message all along. The emptiness she felt was not a curse, but a reminder. It was a signal from her soul, reminding her that she was searching in the wrong places. True happiness cannot be found in people, possessions, or worldly achievements, because these things are temporary. They fade, they change, and they can be taken away at any moment. A heart that depends on them will always be fragile, always restless, always searching for the next thing. She began to understand that chasing happiness in the wrong places is like chasing a mirage in the desert. From a distance, it looks like water, and with every step you believe you are closer. But when you finally reach it, you realize it was never there. The pursuit itself leaves you more thirsty and more desperate. That is the reality of worldly pursuits. They promise happiness, but they cannot deliver it. They may bring a moment of joy, but never lasting peace. This realization was painful. But it was also the beginning of clarity. She started to see that her heart was designed differently from what the world was offering. The constant disappointments she faced when chasing happiness in people and things were in fact pointing her to the truth. They were teaching her that no one and nothing in this world could ever satisfy the deepest needs of her soul. That constant feeling of being unfulfilled was not a sign of weakness. It was a sign that she was searching in the wrong direction. The heart longs for its creator, and until it is connected to him, it will always feel incomplete. The pain of losing one's true self is unlike any other pain, because it is not visible to the world, yet it eats away at the soul from within. She began her journey with hope, dreams, and a clear sense of who she was, but slowly, piece by piece, she drifted away from that identity. She became so consumed with pleasing others, fitting in, and living up to expectations that she forgot the essence of who she truly was. Each time she silenced her own voice to match the voices around her. Each time she sacrificed her values to gain acceptance, she lost a part of herself. At first, she thought it was normal, that in order to be loved and respected she had to compromise her own heart. But over time, she realized that in trying to gain the world, she had lost herself. The pain of this loss did not come suddenly, it crept in gradually. One day she would look in the mirror, and no longer recognize the person staring back. The sparkle in her eyes seemed dimmer, the sincerity in her smile was forced, and the weight on her shoulders grew heavier. She questioned herself, how did she end up here? She remembered the girl she once was, innocent, full of life, connected to her creator, hopeful in her heart. Somewhere along the way, that girl got buried beneath layers of expectations, disappointments, worldly distractions, and compromises. The person she had become was not the person she wanted to be, and that realization brought a pain deeper than words. Losing oneself feels like being surrounded by people yet feeling utterly alone. It is smiling when your heart is crying. It is achieving milestones while your soul feels empty. It is living in a way that pleases everyone, but leaves you with no peace when you lie down at night. She had lost her anchor, the very thing that kept her grounded. Without that sense of identity, every decision became confusing, every path felt uncertain, and every achievement felt meaningless. She felt like a stranger in her own life, pretending to be someone she was not, trying to convince herself that she was happy, while her heart whispered otherwise. The greatest tragedy of losing oneself is that it often goes unnoticed by others. To the outside world, she looked successful, strong, and capable. People admired her for her achievements, her confidence, and her composure. But no one could see the inner battle, the emptiness that haunted her, when the noise faded. No one could feel the heaviness in her chest, when she tried to sleep at night, or the questions that echoed in her mind about who she had become. This is the kind of pain that is invisible yet unbearable, a pain that leaves scars not on the body but on the soul. At times, she tried to ignore it. She told herself that maybe this is what life is supposed to feel like, that maybe everyone goes through the same emptiness. But deep down she knew this was not true. The heart cannot lie, and hers was restless, longing for something beyond the world she had built around herself. She realized that losing herself was not simply about changing habits or lifestyles, it was about losing the connection with the core of her being, the fitra that Allah had placed inside her. The purity, the clarity, the sense of purpose that once guided her had been buried under layers of worldly distractions, and the pain she felt was her soul's cry to return to that original state. This loss was a wake-up call, because when a person loses themselves, they also lose direction. They become like a ship without a compass, tossed by every wave of circumstance, influenced by every opinion, and shaken by every hardship. That was exactly how she felt, lost, fragile, and uncertain. Every decision drained her, every relationship left her questioning her worth, and every moment of silence reminded her of the emptiness within. She was alive on the outside, but inside, she felt like she was merely existing, not truly living. The pain of losing oneself teaches a powerful lesson. When you disconnect from Allah, you disconnect from who you truly are. She realized that her sense of identity was never meant to come from people's approval, material success, or worldly status. It was always meant to come from her Creator. And the more she drifted from Him, the more she drifted from herself. The heart is not at rest when it forgets its purpose, and no amount of worldly distraction can replace the peace of being true to who you are in the sight of Allah. The turning point of surrender to Allah often comes at a moment when the weight of life becomes unbearable. For her, it was not a single dramatic event, but a series of moments where she felt broken, lost, and exhausted from trying to carry her burdens alone. She had tried everything, seeking happiness in people, in possessions, in achievements, but nothing filled the void inside her. Each attempt ended in disappointment, and the emptiness only grew deeper. She reached a stage where she realized that no human being, no material object, and no worldly accomplishment could give her the peace she was searching for. It was in that moment of desperation that her heart finally whispered a prayer, a sincere cry to the one she had been neglecting all along. That moment was the beginning of her turning point. Surrender does not come when everything is perfect, it comes when a person realizes they cannot manage life without Allah. She had tried to control every detail of her life, to plan every step, to make herself strong enough to handle the pain on her own. But the more she tried to take control, the more she lost control. It was as if life was teaching her that she was never meant to carry everything by herself. She began to see that true strength is not in pretending to be unshakable, but in admitting weakness before Allah and asking Him for help. The act of raising her hands in dua, with tears streaming down her face, brought her a relief that nothing else ever had. The turning point was not about the disappearance of her problems. Her challenges remained, but something inside her shifted. She stopped running after the world with the same desperation. She stopped expecting people to fill the emptiness in her heart. Instead, she began to place her trust in the one who created her. With every prayer, with every tear, with every moment of remembrance, she felt a piece of her soul returning to life. It was as if her heart, which had been suffocating under the weight of the dunya, was finally breathing again. The calmness she felt in sujood was unlike any joy the world had ever given her. This turning point was also about realizing that surrender is not weakness, it is strength. To admit that you cannot do it alone, to acknowledge your need for Allah, is to connect with the source of all power and guidance. She had spent so long trying to prove herself to people, trying to show the world she was strong, but in surrendering to Allah she discovered a deeper strength. It was a strength rooted not in her own abilities, but in the knowledge that Allah was with her. And when Allah is with you, even in your darkest moments, you are never truly alone. Slowly, her life began to change. She no longer chased happiness in fleeting pleasures. She sought it in prayer, in Qur'an, in remembering Allah during the quiet hours of the night. She began to feel the sweetness of faith, the peace that comes when you rely completely on your Creator. Her heart, which once felt lost and empty, began to find stability. She realized that surrendering to Allah did not mean giving up on her life, but rather aligning her life with a higher purpose. It meant trusting His plan even when she did not understand it, knowing that His wisdom is greater than her own. The turning point of surrender is also a moment of clarity. She began to see that all the pain, the emptiness, and the struggles she went through were not meaningless. They were guiding her back to Allah, teaching her that without Him life is hollow, but with Him even hardships become bearable. She understood that Allah allows the heart to feel empty, so that it can yearn for Him. He allows the soul to feel restless, so that it seeks His comfort. And He allows difficulties to break a person, so that they can be rebuilt stronger with faith. For her, the turning point was not the end of the journey, but the beginning of a new one. It was the realization that she did not need to carry life's burdens on her own shoulders anymore. She only needed to place them in the hands of the one who is capable of handling all things. It was the discovery that peace does not come from controlling life, but from trusting the one who controls it. In that moment of surrender, she found what she had been searching for all along: contentment, clarity, and the first taste of true peace. Healing the heart through faith and worship is one of the most profound journeys a person can experience. After years of searching in the wrong places, she finally began to realize that her heart was not broken beyond repair, it was simply disconnected from the only source that could heal it. Faith became the medicine she had long been seeking, and worship became the path through which her soul could finally breathe again. The very practices she once neglected, prayer, remembrance, recitation of the Quran, slowly became her refuge, her safe place in a world that had once left her restless. What she discovered was that faith and worship were not rituals to be performed out of obligation alone. They were acts of love, trust, and connection that brought life back to her heart. At first, the process was difficult. The habits of neglect and distraction had become deeply rooted, and her heart had grown accustomed to seeking comfort in the wrong things. Praying on time felt heavy, reciting Quran seemed distant, and remembering Allah felt like a discipline, rather than a joy. But she knew that healing required patience, and she pushed herself to stay consistent, believing that if she made a small effort, Allah would open the doors for her. Slowly, she began to taste the sweetness of faith. Every time she stood in prayer and let her tears fall, she felt a burden being lifted. Every verse she recited reminded her that she was not alone, that her Creator was speaking directly to her. Every moment of remembrance calmed her racing thoughts, and gave her a stillness the world could never provide. Faith gave her perspective. She started to see her struggles not as punishments, but as tests designed to draw her closer to Allah. She began to understand that the pain she endured had a purpose, and that purpose was to strengthen her and guide her back to the one she had forgotten. This change in perspective was healing in itself. Instead of resenting her hardships, she started to thank Allah for them, because they had become the reason she found her way back to Him. With every hardship, she saw an opportunity for dua, for patience, for closeness to Allah. Her wounds were no longer signs of weakness, they were signs that Allah loved her enough to bring her back through them. Worship became her anchor. When the world felt chaotic, prayer grounded her. When her heart felt restless, dhikr soothed it. When her mind was overwhelmed, reciting the Quran gave her clarity. She learned that worship was not about escaping the world, but about facing it with the strength that comes from Allah. In sujood, she poured out all her fears, secrets, and dreams, knowing that no one could understand her better than the one who created her. Each act of worship was like a balm to her wounds, slowly closing the gaps in her heart, stitching together the broken pieces, and filling them with light. Faith also gave her identity. She no longer defined herself by how people saw her, by what she owned, or by what she achieved. Instead, she began to see herself as a servant of Allah, honored by the connection she had with her Creator. This shift in identity freed her from the chains of comparison and insecurity. She no longer needed validation from people, because she found her worth in the sight of Allah. That realization healed the insecurities that once consumed her, and gave her a confidence rooted in faith, rather than in the fragile approval of others. Her journey of healing through faith and worship was not about perfection, but about sincerity. She knew she would make mistakes, she knew her faith would fluctuate, but she also knew that Allah valued every effort, no matter how small. Every time she stumbled, she sought forgiveness and started again, and each time she returned, she felt her heart becoming stronger. This taught her that true healing is not a straight path, but a process of constantly turning back to Allah, again and again, with humility and hope. Through faith and worship, her heart found what it had been craving all along: peace, stability, and meaning. The wounds of the past did not disappear, but they were transformed into reminders of Allah's mercy. She came to see that the heart can only be healed when it connects with the one who created it. And in that connection, she discovered a joy that no worldly success, no relationship, and no possession could ever provide. Finding true peace and identity in submission to Allah is the final step in her journey, and it is the most beautiful of all. For so long, she searched for herself in the wrong places. She looked for identity in the approval of people, in the labels society placed on her, in her achievements, and even in her struggles. She thought that if she could be accepted by others, if she could reach a certain milestone, if she could finally overcome her pain, then she would know who she was. But every time she tried to define herself by these things, she ended up feeling more lost than before. The truth began to unfold when she surrendered to Allah, and realized that her true identity was never meant to be tied to the temporary things of this world. It was meant to be anchored in her role as a servant of Allah, a believer, someone chosen to worship and be close to her Creator. Peace came with that realization. It was not the kind of peace that depends on circumstances or on everything going right in life. It was a deeper, unshakable peace, the kind that remains even when storms surround you. Submission to Allah brought her this peace, because it freed her from the endless cycle of trying to please everyone and everything else. She no longer needed to prove herself to the world, because she knew that the only approval that truly mattered was the approval of her Creator. This shift gave her a sense of calm she had never experienced before. The pressure of constantly chasing validation, constantly comparing herself to others, constantly trying to fit in. It all began to fade, because she understood that her worth was defined by Allah, not by people. In submission, she discovered clarity. Life no longer felt like a confusing maze with no direction. She realized that her purpose was simple yet profound: to worship Allah, to live by His guidance, and to strive for the eternal life of the hereafter. Every challenge, every blessing, every moment of her life fit into this bigger picture. Even when things didn't make sense to her, she trusted that they made sense in Allah's plan. This clarity gave her strength. Instead of being shaken by every difficulty, she began to view them as opportunities to grow closer to Allah. Instead of being carried away by temporary pleasures, she reminded herself of the everlasting joy that awaited in Jannah. This perspective transformed the way she lived, because everything now had meaning. Her identity also became a source of empowerment. In the past, she allowed others to define her. Friends, family, society, even strangers. She wore masks to fit in, changed herself to be accepted, and silenced her own voice to avoid rejection. But once she found her identity in Islam, she realized she didn't need to change for anyone but Allah. The values, morals, and strength that came from her faith gave her dignity. She was no longer ashamed of who she was. Instead, she stood firm in her beliefs, proud to be a servant of Allah, knowing that this was the highest honor anyone could hold. This identity gave her resilience, because even when people criticized or misunderstood her, she remained strong, anchored by the truth that her worth did not depend on them. Submission to Allah also healed her heart in ways she never thought possible. The wounds of the past, the disappointments, the broken relationships, they no longer controlled her. She forgave those who hurt her, not because they deserved it, but because she wanted peace with Allah. She let go of grudges, because she realized that holding on to them only weighed her down. She stopped blaming herself for the mistakes she had made in her journey, because she understood that Allah's mercy was greater than any sin. Her heart became lighter, softer, and more open to love, kindness, and gratitude. This was not the fragile happiness she once chased. This was lasting peace rooted in faith. As her connection with Allah grew, so did her inner strength. She no longer feared the future the way she once did, because she trusted that Allah was in control. She no longer obsessed over the past, because she believed that every moment of it was part of Allah's wisdom to bring her to where she was now. She lived in the present with contentment, knowing that whatever came her way, good or bad, was ultimately for her benefit if she responded with faith. This mindset freed her from anxiety and regret, allowing her to live with balance and serenity. Her worship took on a new depth. Prayer was no longer a ritual, it was her lifeline. In every sujood, she felt the weight of the world leave her shoulders as she poured her heart out to Allah. The Quran was no longer just words to recite, it became a mirror for her soul, a source of guidance and comfort. Dhikr was no longer something she did mechanically, it was the rhythm of her heart, a constant reminder that Allah was with her in every moment. These acts of worship became her safe haven, the place where she found herself whenever life felt overwhelming. Through them, she discovered the sweetness of faith, a sweetness far greater than anything the world could offer. The peace she found in submission also shaped her relationships. She no longer relied on others to complete her or to fill her emptiness. Instead, she approached relationships from a place of wholeness, offering love and kindness without the desperation for something in return. She valued the people in her life, but she no longer placed them on a pedestal that belonged only to Allah. This freed her from disappointment, because she understood that people are human. They will make mistakes, they will change, they will sometimes leave. But Allah will never leave. This realization brought stability to her connections with others, and allowed her to love them in a healthier, more genuine way. Even her view of success transformed. In the past, success meant reaching worldly goals, gaining recognition, and building a certain image. But now, success meant living a life that pleased Allah. Success was being consistent in prayer, treating people with kindness, seeking knowledge, and striving for Jannah. This redefined success lifted a huge burden from her, because she no longer felt enslaved to society's expectations. She focused on what truly mattered, and this gave her a deep sense of fulfillment. Her journey showed her that true peace is not found in escaping life's challenges, but in facing them with the strength that comes from faith. Identity is not found in the labels people give you, but in embracing who you are as a servant of Allah. And submission is not about losing freedom, but about finding the greatest freedom of all, the freedom from fear, from doubt, from emptiness. In bowing her head to Allah, she rose in dignity. In surrendering her plans, she gained clarity. In placing her trust in Him, she found the stability she had been searching for all her life. Through submission, she not only found peace, but she also found herself, and that was the greatest gift of all.